Hey, sis, Dad, Mom, come on. Your story hour's on.
Presenting Your Story Hour, building for a better tomorrow.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Your Story Hour. I'm Uncle Dan.
And I'm Aunt Carol. We're so happy you've joined us. And today's story, Uncle Dan.
Yes?
Today's story is the final chapter of our series on Paul Revere.
Oh, good. That's right. And as I remember, Aunt Carol, we ended the last chapter at a very exciting moment.
I guess you could say that, Uncle Dan, since Paul Revere and two other patriots had just been captured as they were spreading the alarm about the British regulars marching toward Lexington and Concord.
Oh, yes, but at the last moment?
Well, let's just rejoin the story at that point. What do you say?
Excellent idea. What's the name of today's story?
I call it Paul Revere and the Shots at Lexington. Surrounded by British officers, the three messengers followed their captor's instructions and guided their horses into a nearby pasture. Suddenly, Dr. Prescott sensed a split second of opportunity for escape.
Now, Revere, put on! Make a break for it!
Yeah! Yeah! After them, men! Don't let them get away! Stop in the name of the crown or you're all dead men!
Dr. Prescott took off at a gallop, disappeared into the woods to the left, and escaped. Paul Revere headed for the woods to the right, but was cut off and recaptured. William Dawes used the confusion to escape toward the highway, eluding his captors and eventually heading back to Lexington on foot. The men holding Paul Revere captive almost immediately began to treat him roughly.
Ah! Is this the way General Gage treats his prisoners?
That's what you deserve.
Yeah. Oh, you rebels. That hand.
Stop in the name of the crown! Whoa! What's going on here?
Well, sir, I
thought as much. Back away this instant.
Yes, sir.
That goes for all of you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And now, sir.
Yes,
May I have your name?
my name is Paul Revere.
What? Paul Revere?
Yes.
Paul Revere? What a catch!
Oh, we have him now.
Let me at him. Me too! Hold, soldier!
Yes, sir.
No order has been given to strike the prisoner.
Yes, sir.
So, you are Paul Revere. We have heard much of you in your activities, Mr. Revere. And we are most happy to have you in our possession, but do not be afraid. You will not be hurt.
I'm not afraid.
Men, you may have your pistols drawn, but they are not to be fired. Understood?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Interrogate Mr. Paul Revere as we have our other prisoners. It seems the roads tonight are full of galloping messengers. Anyway, we have much to learn from him.
Yes, sir. And what of your mission tonight? Why are you here instead of Boston, home in bed?
Gentlemen, you've missed your mark. Your aim is off.
What of our aim?
We are out to recapture deserters. What is that to you?
Well said.
I know better. I know what you are after, and I've alarmed the country all the way up.
Oh, have you now? And just what have you said?
What do you know of your own mission?
Well, we,
I see. Let me inform you then. The regulars have come across the bay and landed near Cambridge. Even now, they are on the march to Lexington and Concord, where they hope to destroy a cache of munitions and arrest certain Whig leaders. That is what is acting tonight.
But how could you...
But be warned. I and many others have spread the alarm tonight. The militia in Lexington is already assembling. There should be 500 men there soon. And if I didn't know that messengers have already been sent to alarm the entire countryside, and they are even now probably as much as 50 miles away, I would have risked a shot from you before I allowed you to stop me. Believe me, it is not safe for you to be near the town of Lexington.
Paul Revere tried his best to steer the men away from Lexington and from Sam Adams and John Hancock. Soon, Major Edward Mitchell himself arrived, strode over to Paul Revere, and clapped a pistol to his head.
If you do not tell me the truth, Mr. Revere, I'll blow your...
You do not need to threaten me, Major. I call myself a man of truth. I will tell the truth, for I am not afraid.
May I remind you that you're in a perilous situation?
It is you that are in a perilous situation, sir. If you remain near Lexington, your own life will be in danger.
As Paul Revere spoke, his captors grew increasingly nervous. Clearly, here was a man who knew what he was about, who spoke with assurance and boldness. Soon they had Paul and the other prisoners trotting along the road toward Lexington. Suddenly, while still a distance from the town, a shot rang out.
What was that, Revere? I demand an explanation.
It is a warning, Major, to further alarm the countryside.
What did he say?
Warning!
The whole town is waiting for us, Major.
That's right. Forward, men. We shall not be deterred.
Now what?
It's another signal.
They know we're coming. Oh, we're all dead men.
Dismount, men. Cut the saddles and bridles off the prisoners' horses. Let them all go and then follow me.
Even this one, sir?
Even Paul Revere. We're done with him.
Soon, Paul Revere and his fellow prisoners made their way toward Lexington on foot. Little had the British officers known that the gunshots they had heard were probably just a result of militia members clearing their guns. But due to Paul's quick thinking, at least this one group of British soldiers had been turned away. And he had been correct. Thanks to his prearranged system of riders and routes, news of the British march was being spread far and wide. Church bells were calling men to muster in towns across the countryside. Nearly the entire Massachusetts militia would soon be on their way. Even now, the Lexington militia was beginning to assemble on the town green. Their leader, Captain Parker, sought counsel of the brave men before him.
And so, men, we agreed that we must defend ourselves.
War's a bloody business, but we're ready if it comes to that.
The regulars may scoff at us. We may not have fancy uniforms, but we know what we're about.
That's right. We know how to fight if we have to. We fight for freedom, then. Let not the first shot be ours, but let us be ready to defend liberty.
As news of the coming confrontation spread abroad, the households of the New England countryside were the sites of hurried goodbyes as men of fighting age left to muster with their units. Those left behind, particularly those who deemed themselves to be in harm's way, fled from their homes to find refuge in the woods, in public buildings, or with friends.
Hurry, children. The redcoats will soon be here. Phoebe, get a blanket for your baby brother.
Yes, Mother.
Oh, where shall we go? I don't know. I don't know. The church. Yes. That's it. We'll take refuge in the church. Come, children, hurry.
Still others hurriedly busied themselves with activities useful to the cause.
Be safe, Joseph.
God be with you, dearest.
And God be with you, Joseph, and all our men. I wish I could help do something. Something necessary, something useful. I know. I'll take the tax books for the town and bury them. The regulars will not get their hands on them if I have my say about it. They'll not get the names of our citizens. They'll not learn our private business. No, sir.
Needless to say, the early morning hours of April 19th, 1775 were busy ones for all those reached by Paul Revere's alarm system. But the most memorable moments of that morning were yet to come.
Those were memorable times for sure, but also very stressful and dangerous, Aunt Carol.
Mm-hmm.
Paul Revere and many others risked their lives, and many lost their lives to establish the United States of America.
It's true, Uncle Dan. You know, it's pretty easy today for us to take all the rights and privileges we enjoy for granted. It's good to remember our beginnings and what our freedoms cost.
Yes, and Your Story Hour has hundreds of stories ready for downloading from our website or available in CD albums that make the history of our country come alive.
And there are many stories of other brave and famous people as well. Joan of Arc, Florence Nightingale, Pasteur, Schweitzer, and Shackleton, and many more.
We invite you to visit our website at yourstoryhour.org. Click on products and see for yourself. That's at yourstoryhour.org.
But now let's get back to today's story, Paul Revere and the shots at Lexington. Paul Revere and the other prisoners had now reached the edge of Lexington where they went their separate ways. Hoping fervently that John Hancock and Sam Adams had taken his warning seriously, Paul now headed directly for the Clark home where he had left them more than an hour before. Surely they had escaped from the threat of capture by the advancing British troops. Surely by now they would be on their way to a place of safety. But imagine his surprise and dismay when he finally arrived back at his friend's home.
Oh, Mr. Revere.
Miss Dolly. Dolly Quincy.
Come in, Mr. Revere, quickly. This house is in an uproar.
What's wrong?
You know how stubborn my beloved fiancé can be. We cannot convince John that he must get away.
He's still here?
Yes, and Sam Adams as well.
Both of them?
Indeed, it's a madhouse. John's aunt is in a state, trying to help Mrs. Clark get the children dressed, buzzing around. She's practically in tears.
There you are, Miss Dolly. Oh, Revere. Thank goodness you are here. Please, speak to John. Get him moving.
I'll do my best.
Miss Dolly, did you get the valuables to the garret? Everything must be hidden away in case the house is raided.
Yes, Mr. Clark, and some things are hidden in the potatoes in the cellar.
Excellent. Adams, Hancock, here's Revere. Return to us.
Paul, come here. I need you.
What is this? Why are you two not gone? The regulars must be nearly at the doorstep by now.
That's what I keep telling him. I'm a fighting man, do you hear? A soldier. I do not turn and run.
Maybe not, but you are not your own man now, John.
Exactly right. If I had my musket, I would never turn my back on those troops. That's not our business now. Our battle is of another sort, John. We belong to the cabinet. It should never be said that John Hancock ran from the enemy.
Sam's right, John. The two of you must be protected for the future. Can you imagine the victory General Gage and the regulars would have if you were to fall into their hands?
Finally, John Hancock was persuaded, and he, Sam Adams, and Paul Revere traveled by coach to a parsonage in Woburn, located northwest of Lexington. As soon as Paul felt that the two were safe for the time being, he headed back to Lexington. Soon after he arrived...
Mr. Revere! Mr. Revere!
Who is that? Who's calling me?
Mr. Revere! Over here! Oh, Mr. Revere, thank goodness.
Why, John Lowell. What is it, my man? What's wrong?
I need your help, sir. You know that as John Hancock's confidential clerk, I am privy to documents.
Yes, of course.
Documents, papers, and all sorts of information. Things that could incriminate and bring great damage to the cause of liberty and to the Patriots if they were discovered by the British authorities.
An understatement, I'm sure, but I know he trusts you completely, John.
Yes, I've carefully protected the papers and documents, helped him store everything in a trunk, which Mr. Hancock takes with him wherever he goes for safekeeping.
Yes, go on.
Well, sir, when he quitted here this morning...
Yes, in fact, I've just returned from secreting him and Adams in a safe place.
Well, this morning, Mr. Hancock forgot to take the trunk.
What? You mean it's here in Lexington?
Yes, upstairs in the Buckman Tavern where we were staying.
Oh.
It's monstrously heavy, sir. I tried to move it by myself, but it's impossible. If the British get their hands on it...
Say no more, John. Lead the way.
Paul Revere and John Lowell hurried toward the Buckman Tavern, which was several hundred yards away on Lexington Green. It served as a place of refreshment, but also as an inn and meeting house for the town. Many of the militiamen were milling around, having received a false report from a messenger that British troops were not on their way to Lexington after all. As Paul Revere and John Lowell neared the meeting house, however...
Whoa! Colonel Parker! Colonel Parker!
Over here!
I wonder what's acting.
I don't know. We'd better go see. Oh, Colonel Parker, sir. The British regulars are at the rocks. They're just down the road.
What? The earlier messenger saw no sign of troops?
I don't know about that, sir. I was cut off behind the column. I couldn't get through until just now.
John, we better get going and hide that trunk.
Right, sir.
William Diamond, where's my drummer? Diamond!
Yes, sir. Over here, sir.
Grab your drum, my boy. Signal the call to arms.
William Diamond began to beat out the command to arms. The church bells began to toll, and the Lexington militia began to assemble on the green in front of the Buckman Tavern. Paul Revere and John Lowell charged into the tavern and up the stairs to the second floor, where they found the trunk. From the vantage point of the room's window, Paul could see the road below.
The redcoats are nearly here. I can see them on the road.
Oh, no. Sir, what are we going to do?
We are going to get this trunk down the stairs and into the woods.
Yes, sir.
Ready, John?
Yes, sir.
Get a good grip. Now, lift. Oh, thunderation. This is heavy.
It's full. To the brim, sir.
The papers. Careful there. Watch the door jam.
Yes, sir.
Easy. Oh, easy. Oh, it's slow business.
I don't even want to know how much this weighs. What's that first step, sir? I see it. You have most of the weight. On you, sir, but be careful.
The large trunk was indeed most heavy. As Paul Revere and John Lowell struggled down the stairs with their burden, outside, on Lexington Green, Captain Parker directed the militia to form ranks.
Fall in, men! Formation! Fall in!
The British regulars were clearly in sight, and they in turn could see that the woods and hills were full of militiamen heading, as they themselves were, toward Lexington. They could hear William Diamond's drum beats, calling the militia to arms on Lexington Green. The air was full of apprehension on both sides, and in the midst of the Lexington formation, two figures could be seen, struggling toward the woods with a heavy trunk between them.
This way, John. Through the ranks. Make way, please. Thank you. There's so few. We can't make a stand here. I don't think there's 70 men on the green. Excuse us. Make way. Make way. More men are on the way. You can see some of them in the woods even now. Maybe so. But if Captain Parker makes us...
Men, attention! Stand your ground! Don't fire unless fired upon! But if they want to have a war, let it begin here!
By now, Paul Revere and John Lowell were clearing the back corner of the tavern on their way to the woods. They could hear the battle cry of the British troops beginning to swell, and the British officers' shouts of contempt.
Put down your arms, you villains!
Disperse, ye rebels! Disperse!
They could hear Captain Parker call his militia back.
Men of the Lexington militia, disperse! Do not fire! Repeat! Fall back! Do not fire!
And then they heard it, loud and clear, a gunshot.
Hurry, John. It has started. The first shot of the war has been fired.
Just then, the two men reached the woods and began to camouflage the trunk. The critical papers would now be safe from the hands of the British. However, behind them on the Lexington Green, great confusion erupted. Each side looked to see who had fired that first shot. Some say it came from the British troops, some from one of the militiamen on the green. Other reports say that it did not come from either of the sides that stood face to face in Lexington, but the gun of a spectator. Whatever the truth, the effect was electrifying. Without orders to do so, the British troops began to fire.
They're firing blanks at us! Nobody has fallen! Just powder! They can't hit the broadside of the barrel! I'm hit! I'm hit! They're not blanks! They'll not shoot this rebel without consequence! I'll give them the guts of my gun!
As onlookers ran for cover, Lexington's militiamen endeavored to disperse following their orders. The British line was out of control, only to be reorganized when Colonel Smith arrived in the forefront and summoned a drummer to beat out the commands. More and more of the militia from the surrounding countryside began to assemble, and soon the Battle of Lexington would begin in earnest. Meanwhile, back in Boston, as General Gage paced the floor.
Dearest, I thought I heard you.
Yes. Yes, you heard me all right.
What's wrong? Please, dearest, stop pacing so. Tell me, what is wrong?
Today, once again, I have sent troops into harm's way. And unfortunately, if I don't miss my guess, the mission has been compromised.
Oh?
I have alerted Captain Moncrief and Lord Percy. They will lead the reinforcements.
I see.
And so, hopefully, that part of the problem will be resolved. However, there is another loose end that needs rectifying.
What is that, my dear?
Margaret, it pains me to do this, but you will pack for England.
What?
Do you think I am not sensible of certain affections you have had for this rebel cause? Do you think I'm blind or deaf? But a few minutes passed after I charged Colonel Smith with his mission when the orders were overheard being repeated on the street. Only 3 people were in the room when I spoke. Myself, Smith, and...
And me?
You suspect me.
It is a risk I can no longer take. Lives will be lost today. British lives, Margaret.
And American.
Yes, it was destined to be so. I swear it. It has been approaching for months now. Years. And so it is to England you go, Margaret. It can be no other way.
No proof has ever been uncovered that General Gage's wife, Margaret, was, in fact, the highly placed spy who met with Dr. Warren to sound the alarm of the British march to Lexington and Concord. But many, including her own husband, came to suspect her. Whoever it was, his or her message of warning put into motion the elaborate system of messengers and alarms that had been organized by Paul Revere, the Patriot silversmith. And now the battle had begun. After the initial volleys had been fired, the British leader, Colonel Smith, met with his officers.
Now that our troops have reorganized, we're ready to engage again. But Lexington is not the goal of our march.
What?
We're marching to Concord.
But, sir, is it wise to go further into the ranks of these hostile farmers?
General Gage's orders are to proceed to Concord, destroy whatever store of munitions can be uncovered, and, if possible, to apprehend Adams and Hancock. We must go forward.
But, sir, General Gage had no idea of the resistance we would meet.
I agree. Our original objective was compromised by circumstances. The whole countryside has been alerted.
The militia ranks are swelling, sir. Look at them coming.
You can be sure I see them. But I have my orders, and I will obey them. We march to Concord.
And so the British regulars began their 6-mile march to Concord. Once they had cleared Lexington, the townsfolk began to gather on the town green.
Oh, God. I can't believe it. Robert Monroe, Sam Hadley, Asher Porter, all dead. My Jonathan is dead on our very doorstep.
I saw it all. Jonathan Harrington shot in the chest, dragging himself home. It was horrible. Horrible to see.
7 of our town. 7, all dead.
And 9 more
wounded. And some of them won't make it.
Shot right in front of our very eyes.
One of us has lost someone, a father, a brother.
A son.
How dare they? How dare those arrogant redcoats fire upon us?
What have we done to them? What right do they have?
If it's more they want, it's more they'll get. I, for one, will not forget this.
Neither will I.
None of us will forget.
No.
The Lexington militia would engage the Redcoats again that very day as they retreated from Concord, and this time they would fight with new heart and purpose. But first, the British regulars marched toward neighboring Concord. There they were met by more gathering militiamen, alerted by Dr. Samuel Prescott, who had ridden ahead after escaping from capture. Astonished to find the fighting so fierce and so well organized, the British ranks retreated back toward Lexington. All along the way, they were engaged in repeated skirmishes and trapped by numerous ambushes. Finally, that night, the utterly exhausted British troops made their way back to Boston. They had suffered terrible losses at the hands of the Patriots. The Patriot militia had incurred considerable casualties as well, but they were fighting for the right to be free and to rule themselves. In the end, their sacrifice paved the way for the document issued just a little over a year later that is still revered by every American, the Declaration of Independence.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it.
Paul Revere's plan, his famous ride, and the efforts of so many others on the night of April 18th and 19th, 1775, will long be remembered for their audacity and brilliance. Just as the citizens of Lexington would never forget, we as Americans will never forget. We honor every messenger and patriot who took part in this episode of our history, and may we always remember that our freedom was bought with a price, that it was bought with the blood of our forefathers, and it is up to us and the generations to come to bravely defend the freedoms we all know and love.
My, Aunt Carol, Paul Revere and the Patriots. What an adventure. And I guess the word adventure hardly does it justice.
Mm-hmm.
What happened to Paul Revere after that day in Lexington?
Well, he continued to work for the cause of liberty in a number of ways. Then, after the war, he returned to his silver shop, founded a factory to produce church bells, learned to work with copper, and eventually founded the Revere Copper and Brass Company.
I see. And did he leave politics behind?
Oh, no. He actively promoted the Constitution and continued to uphold his ideas of government. He died on May 10th, 1818, but he is not forgotten.
Well, Aunt Carol, I'm sure your series of stories on Paul Revere will help us all to remember and to celebrate our freedoms.
I hope so, Uncle Dan. And I'd like to celebrate our country right now with one of my favorite songs from the Kids Sing America cassette. So here are the Brentwood Kids singing, God Bless America.